What's up, guys? Neil here, Prospect Snow and Wake. Coming back at you with some of the stuff that we are doing to build wakeboards for the 2021 season. And if you've seen some of the other videos, I'm just posting up what we're doing in the shop to give you a little bit of an inside look at how we build our skis, snowboards, and wakeboards right now. And to give you some insight on how much of an actually pain in the ass these things are to build. And you guys don't really get to see some of this inside perspective. And a lot of people think it's pretty cool. So if you don't know my story, I actually started this journey, this brand, out of a small boat shop in Madison, Wisconsin. Boat shop called Rich's Board Sports, which is a place that I'll always call home, and a place that you should stop at if you are in Madison, Wisconsin. And I built my first press there. And what I built now is leaps and bounds past where we started, but nonetheless, when I first started this, I had no money. I was working part-time after college to pay some bills, but try and get this brand up and running. And I knew that I had to build a snowboard wakeboard press, and there was a guy in town that had a building that was sitting in a field, essentially, that was unassembled, and he wasn't going to do anything with it. And I found out that he had this, and he kind of, I don't know, maybe some degree saw this passion thing that I was doing and this thing that I was trying to start, and he was excited about it. And so he graciously gave me the medal for building this press for $500, and he even cut it up for me, and we went and picked it up and had to process it a bunch to get it up and running. But that's kind of where it started, and there was a lot of work in between that. But so I suppose I'll show you what I have these days and how we press boards. And keep in mind that there's not really a company that sells ski and snowboard presses. Like that's not a typical thing that you can buy. You could probably hire out an engineering firm and pay several $100,000, but no ski and snowboard companies really do that. So here's what we built. Let me zoom out a little bit. So this press is the second one that I've built. And you can see down below there, we've got kind of the wakeboard molding shape. Up above, you kind of see a little cavity there under those like little pinch clamps with some fabric. That's our sublimation press. So that's like a graphic press. Imagine like a giant t-shirt press that can do a graphic of a whole ski or snowboard or a wakeboard. And so this thing weighs about 4,000 pounds at this point. Definitely not lightweight. And the reason that it's so heavy is because when we press these boards, we're pressing at about 80 pounds per square inch. So if we look at the length times the depth for surface area, it really comes out to between 6, 10, and sometimes even 20,000 pounds worth of pressure when we press this. So these big I-beams are what's needed. And with this press, this is the second one that I've built. For this one, I actually called Del Paso Steel here in Sacramento, California. And I just told them, I'm like, I need a 40-foot I-beam, and then I need you to cut it in 9-foot lengths for me, and then I'll need a couple 20-inch lengths as well for the depth. And then I went and picked it up, painted this guy up, and then I had to drill all 142 holes in this guy, which if you've ever drilled holes into steel, you know that it's not that fun. Fortunately, this time around, compared to the first one that I built, was a lot easier because I had some of the correct tools. But so then you can see that this one is all bolted on as well. And so moving this thing around is a bit of a task. It's on a couple casters, but to move it with just one person is much like moving a car. And so here's kind of how this whole thing works is we got our wakeboard mold is in there. So that's kind of your male and female mold. You can see here, this is the electrical heat blankets. So these heat blankets, it's heated on top and on the bottom, and that heats the plates up to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. That flash cures the epoxy, and it also liquefies the epoxy so that it seeps into the wood, the glass, and the plastics nice and deep. And then, so with our epoxies at 70 degrees, if it was a 70-degree day, it would probably take 3 or 4 days before we could pull it out of the press. And it wouldn't yield a very strong board, but at 180 degrees, 20 minutes, and this thing is done cooking and we can pull it out. So the way that it works is that we use epoxy to lay this up. And with the way epoxy works, instead of like air drying, what it does is it's a chemical reaction. And then that chemical reaction is catalyzed or sped up with heat. And so again, with that heat, 20 minutes and this guy's done. So that's a big portion of making these things professionally. So heated on top and on the bottom at 180 degrees. The way that that this clamps together is this is a literal fire hose from the Madison, Wisconsin Fire Department. And that inflates and causes these two to kind of clamp together at 80 pounds per square inch. And so we've got kind of a little control center over here. So if I could just flip this switch, you can see it actuating up and clamping together. It takes a minute or two to come up to pressure, but what's pretty cool is like these shapes, the male and female mold shape, we're one of the only ones that actually press like this. Most other like ski and snowboard brands or even wakeboard brands, and they'll have their air bladder on the inside, and so that way it kind of is what it does is they use it for pressure distribution, but for us we actually build shaping into our molds, so it's a direct contact system, and we prefer this because I think that we can get better consistency out of it, and we can get great pressure distribution out of it as well. And so with this, it takes some more accuracy when we build these molds. We have to build the profile of how the core goes from thick to thin on the ends. We actually have to build that into that profile. So a lot more, this is a little bit more technical going in, but in the end it makes everything much more simple, and we can really kind of kick boards out with a lot better consistency than if we had this on the inside. So the other part is this is actually the heat controller for the heat blankets that I showed you before. So built out of an old ammo box, and this is like one of the first things that I built for this. This has been here since pretty much like day one of Prospect. So just a little flip on the switch here, and you can see these are PIDs. So these are just kind of little information instruments that, just like your oven at home, that tries to, these are all in Celsius. It tries to get up to a target temperature, and that's like the current temperature. That we have some thermocouples reading out the current temperature. And so when it gets up to current temperature, it turns them off. And then when it gets back down below, it cools off. And then it turns them back on until it's nice and stable. And so for that, I had to teach myself electrical engineering to be able to even kind of wire this circuit up like accurately and within code. So the other part that I'll tell you about is this sublimation press. And like I said before, this is, if you've ever seen like those clamshell t-shirt presses, it's kind of like that, except for a massive version that's 20 inches deep and 7 feet long. And so the thing about sublimation is the way that we do the graphics is we'll print it off on paper. This is how we do a digital graphic. We print it off on paper, and then we've got specialized plastics that we order from Austria that are the top sheet and the base, and we put the plastic in against the paper print, and then we close this up, and that cooks it actually at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And what that does is it evaporates the ink off of the paper and then dyes the plastic. So with that, we can actually do like photographic, we can do photographic style graphics, and we can do customized graphics a little bit easier. We don't do a lot of customized graphics because it's just, it's tons of work. But if you ever want to do a custom board, just give us a shout, and if we can fit it in, we'll do it. And so this one has its own heat controller over here and its own air controller there. But so yeah, this is kind of what goes into it, man. Again, we built this guy from scratch, from the ground up, and again, just another piece of stoke that we're all about, just building these things in-house. So I hope you think that was like worth talking about. You know, like if you guys, any of you guys that are like mechanical engineers, this is like the coolest spot ever, because you can totally geek out on the stuff that we do here. But for you kids that are wondering what the hell you want to do in school, and you're wondering in math class why you're learning some of the ridiculous math that you're learning, it's kind of because of the engineering stuff. And knowing how to do some of that stuff is well worth understanding down the road, so that you can kind of, it empowers you to be able to build stuff like this. So yeah, again, I hope that you guys enjoy that. If you could, give us a follow, and if you know anyone that needs wakeboards this year, have them give us a shout, and check us out at prtahoe.com. Again, this is Neil Henderson, Prospect Snow and Wake. Peace out.